All right, so episode 50,
Episode 50.
Bukuro Boys Bonanza.
50.
Back.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
After a 2-week break, right? We're back with the made it to 50. It's actually more than 50, right? Because you did like your solo
Yeah,
monologue.
that was a 0.5 technically.
So
Yeah,
actually at 50.5, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I count that kind of as a
Yeah.
separate track just because
Yeah.
it's yeah. But we're here with Drew Montgomery. I think we've been teasing this guest for a while.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here.
You can probably give a better intro than I can.
I just let him
Just
let
defer
Drew
to Drew.
introduce
Yeah.
himself, probably. Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
no,
coming.
my
Excited-
pleasure. My
excited
pleasure.
to
My pleasure.
talk.
Yeah.
I'm a longtime resident of Japan. I've been here for about 24 years. Originally from the U.S. Ritual magician, and been a ritual magician much longer than that. Probably about 30 years now. Game designer, game writer. I work for a company called Chaosium, and 2 game lines.
I'm sure some people watching this will probably be familiar with them.
RuneQuest and Call of Cthulhu. So that's me.
So yeah, we'll try to get into that a little bit more deeply here, maybe. So yeah, we're kind of talking about your background, and I feel like there's sort of a crossover between those interests you just mentioned, like
Yeah, absolutely.
doing magic and doing game design, which is something that comes up a lot. I think we've sort of talked about this a little bit before in previous episodes. I mean, maybe more with video games, but I think your area is more like tabletop kind of RPG kind of stuff. But
And I think the tabletop gaming is really, it's sort of a shamanic experience, right? Because you've got the person who runs the game, so the game master or dungeon master, whatever, depends on what system you're playing, who is sort of like the shaman, and he's sort of leading everybody on a journey into their heads, you know? I mean, it's all done, by talking around the table, but all of the action is really happening, behind your eyes.
Right.
So
yeah.
it is very much like a ceremony, I think, yeah.
Is there anything? I think we kind of alluded to it a little bit before we started, but you're saying you got started with this like quite early, like when you were like 12 or something, or
So, well, I mean, I was always a weird kid. Like,
we have our tree of life here, which
there we go.
People haven't fully seen in full here.
Very important to have one of those around. Yeah. No, I don't remember it specifically, but my parents tell stories that I'd be like 2 years old sneaking down at midnight to watch horror movies on TV, And so I always had that interest in like horror and the occult. And then when I was about 12 years old, we rented a house, and the previous occupant had been really new agey, I guess. She had left all these books in the attic on, ESP and pyramid power and all this, but she also had a copy of Crowley's Magic Without Tears. And she also had left a tarot deck. And so here I was 12, and I asked my mother, what is this? And she's like, oh, it's a tarot deck, And I just immediately dove into it. Like, I took those things with me everywhere. I would take them to school and read for people in the cafeteria. It was just like, and that started it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a interesting story. I mean, I think a lot of people that get into this have like some similar kind of like formative or early encounter with, again, either some kind of Crowley text or like some kind of some other associated book or something that just kind of like spirals or
and I had started gaming around that time as well, and I felt right away that they just sort of dovetailed with each other nicely. And, that just affected everything, because then I ended up going to college and basically majoring in comparative religions because I was interested in mythology and the occult and all that. So, it all just sort of started with that tarot deck. So,
yes. Again, as I said, I think that's kind of a common background to have some kind of like discovery somewhere, some kind of formative encounter with, again, either these texts or like the cards or something else.
Yeah.
You said, like, I mean, was this ever like an issue with your family or your
no?
mom or anything? Were they, like,
my
because this was like I mean, I don't really not really going to comment on your age, but like I imagine this was
fine.
like sort of that.
This was the 80s. This was the 80s.
We kind of have talked in previous episodes about like the satanic panic.
Yeah,
you know, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
the 1980s is really that whole like
the funny
tabletop Satan,
Right.
overlap
Right.
kind of.
The funny thing
culture
about
that-
that is, I got into tabletop role playing games through the school, because in the early 80s, I was in like a GATE program. It's gifted and talented education, they call it, but it's basically for nerds. But
Or is it for the CIA too?
yeah. I've heard those. I've heard those rumors as well. And they were looking for things to do, and the woman leading the program, the school psychologist, brought in a box set of Dungeons and Dragons, because it was, at that time, this was before the beginning of the Satanic Panic, and it was in all of the psychological journals as, good for developmental psychology and imagination and using numbers and communication working together. So that's what started it. But within 4 years, so when I was in high school, then the Dungeons and Dragons after school club was shut down, because suddenly it was all satanic.
That's what and I was getting this a little bit. I think it was only just a few episodes ago too, and I was trying to explain to Dan how anything this incongruous could like ever have. Because again, I mean, you look at Dungeons and Dragons, and you're like, this is a pretty, innocuous, I don't know, J.R. Tolkien kind of game with like, knights and dragons and stuff. And you're like, how are you going to connect this to like satanic ritual abuse and like all these other things that it, sort of got connected to? And I mean, that was a little bit before my time. I mean, I was just kind of like being born around that time, but it was still kind of like there in the background. And like, I remember even when I was a kid, there was this sort of like, Satan association, or like, kind of darker association. And I could never figure it out. I was like, this seems such a silly, innocuous thing to be.
There was a whole political organization, MAD, Mothers Against Dungeons and Dragons, and they were always lobbying Congress and all this.
That must have been such a publicity boost, though, in a way. I mean, like, it must have shifted so many copies just because of that.
I think it did. Yeah. I think it did. And I think that role-playing games actually became stronger because of it. But for me, what was hysterical was, at that point, I was, a young teenager, so I was in my goth phase. Well, I guess I'm still in my goth phase, but
that doesn't necessarily end, right? I mean,
no, it doesn't really end. But I was,
so
here I was listening to heavy metal. I was playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Listening to Sisters of Mercy.
Right. And then everybody's telling me, oh, this is evil, this is satanic. So the effect that had on me being me, is I was like, okay. So I went out and bought a copy of the Satanic Bible and read it.
Yeah.
And then, as I always jokingly say, I read it and then I ended up joining the Church of Satan. So it was actually the Satanic Panic that brought me to Satanism.
Launched it. It's so funny because the last, literally the very last guest we just had on 2 weeks ago, Ramy Michaels, he's probably like the most hardline Church of Satan person I've ever met. I mean, he's got his Satan card, and he's like,
I've got mine.
He looks like LeVay, like he's like classic Satan looking.
I've got the shaved head, so
classic. So,
but
it's just funny the timing with this because, I was thinking originally to have him on today as well. I mean, the timing didn't really work out, but I do think it would have been an interesting conversation because. He has kind of more of a like Middle Eastern background.
Okay.
But again, he was raised in Canada. So can't remember how he got into it. I think he did discuss it on the previous episode. But,
Well, he came from what was it? A Muslim? No.
I
Catholic.
think it was
Catholic.
Catholic or
He
something.
came from a Catholic
yeah.
background, then became atheist, and then Satanist.
Yeah, a lot of people do it because they're rebelling. But for me, like my parents were agnostics at best. We weren't baptized. We never went to church, whatever. So it wasn't that in my case. And in fact, they even tried to, encourage an interest in religion. I remember they gave me a children's illustrated Bible. And there's one picture of it. I just found it recently and I was going to put it up on my blog. But you've got this blonde, blue-eyed, very Aryan Jesus standing on the mountaintop But there was this other guy in this picture, and he was red, and he had horns, and he was much more interesting to me. So
that's the character you wanted to take on, right? Or find out more about. Right?
Yeah, who is this guy here, right? So,
who's this guy? Yeah. Satan.
Yeah. So
that's such an interesting place. Like we did another. I think it was our first time we had Rami on the podcast, and we did get some user comments from people that are like pretty deep in, kind of the LeVay background and like including some of the people that know like what's his name, Nicholas Schreck.
Nick Schreck, yeah.
And I think he actually maybe watched the episode, but I think they're quite like critical of LeVay now. There
was a big falling out.
Yeah. So I feel like if anything, weirdly, like LeVay is almost as controversial now as he was then, but maybe for like different kind of reasons. And
I think he's also more relevant. I mean, people forget. He wrote an essay in the 80s, Pentagonal Revisionism, which was the 5-point plan that the Church of Satan had for the future. One of them was sort of controlled environments, artificial environments that you could design and go into, for your own comfort. It was sort of like, instead of living in a world that other people have made, here's one that you're building yourself. Well, today we've got, all these virtual reality platforms that you can do this. I mean, I've been a Second Life user for 15 years, and that's basically it.
No way.
Yeah. And then the other one was he advocated artificial human companions.
Oh, really?
And we're now in this, you hear about, all these guys now who are dating their AIs, and, he's been weirdly relevant. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting how it works, because I think there was like maybe a bit of a dip like in the 90s and 2000s where it seemed like it was kind of on its way out. And now again, I think inadvertently, maybe due to Nicholas Schreck and some of these other people, I think weirdly people have gotten more back into him.
Well, there's
from a different maybe perspective, or
there's also this other organization now, the Satanic Temple.
Oh yeah,
founded by Lucien Greaves, I think is his name.
Yeah.
They're similar to the Church of Satan in that they're atheists. They don't actually literally believe in a devil, right? But the Church of Satan's policy has always been to be apolitical. Members can be whatever political party they want to be. Yeah. Whereas the Satanic Temple is
it's like pretty
activist.
woke,
yes.
right?
Yeah,
it's
activist.
Like
Yeah. And so that, I think, has become sort of the new face of Satanism, especially for millennials and Gen Z, but LeVay is still there in the background. I mean, you can't talk about the Satanic Temple without also mentioning Anton LeVay. So, it's like...
Yeah, it does. I feel like it does kind of come back to him. And again, in the previous episode, we kind of, I was kind of trying to dig a little bit deeper into like what, how much of LeVay is actually kind of like Ayn Rand, or like how much of him is Crowley, or like how much is like all these... And I think he's sort of like, I feel like he sort of sits at the intersection of a lot of these kind of other thinkers, and like he's like not really fully one, but kind of does have that sort of overlap, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I consider myself probably more of a Thelemite these days.
Yeah.
But I have never found any contradiction between anything in LeVay's philosophy and Crowley's philosophy.
Yeah.
So I do think that LeVay took a lot of influence from that. But he did, and I don't think he gets enough credit, he did have other interesting concepts that were totally fresh, that hadn't been ECI, erotic crystallization inertia, which is
sounds like eroto-comatose lucidity.
Yeah. Well, it's the idea that whenever your first sexual awakening was, you sort of fixate on that time period, and that by listening to music from that period, or wearing fashion from that period, or surrounding yourself with that, it's revitalizing and energizing. It sort of brings you back to that first, And he would use that in ritual magic. He built a whole room for himself in the basement of his house filled with mannequins. It was called the Den of Iniquity. And it was a a dive bar from the early 1950s, where apparently he had his first sexual awakening. So he would go down there at night just to sort of be energized by
that's wild.
by
Wow,
the
yeah.
environment.
So he's like trying to restage the 1950s or something like that.
Yes, yeah. And he built the mannequins himself in there. I mean, you can still find pictures of the stuff online.
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
What constitutes a sexual awakening? Because that's not just your first sexual experience, right?
Yeah. I think it's individual to the magician, is what he would say. Where does your mind take you back to, right? And what music were you listening to? And so yeah.
I feel like that's true, but I guess like maybe the uncharitable interpretation would be that like it sort of turns into like, I don't know, like boomer rock or something, where you're just like stuck in this like endless, I don't know, Led Zeppelin headspace or something, or like sort of.
Well, it's a ritual thing. I mean, you don't want to live in that place forever.
Right,
you want to only do it when you're going into like tap into the energy you want for a magical working.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I do feel like that's true in practice. I mean, I do personally like revisit a lot of music from, again, when I was younger that oftentimes isn't particularly good music, but it just has that kind of
it taps into something
resonance from resonance from being in that time period. But that's interesting. I mean, these are all new things I'm hearing about him now. So that's already some.
He had a lot of really interesting ideas, but I think there were two phases of the Church of Satan. There was that early phase where he was trying to get media attention. Because if you wanted to reach an audience, then obviously this is the '60s. There wasn't an internet. So what did he do? He put on these elaborate public rituals, and he wore like devil horns.
Dress up like Satan, right?
Right. Yeah. But once they got the attention, like in the 80s and the 90s, he went completely underground. I mean, he didn't even want to do interviews, and amazingly, while other satanic organizations were investigated during the Satanic Panic, the Church of Satan was never touched. I mean, but that was his second phase, and at that point he was writing. His books weren't so much on magic, but they were on social criticism and that sort of thing. So yeah, but there's a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah, interesting. Probably to maybe delve back into that again at some point, or maybe look some of that material up, because I'm always trying to kind of reconnect with these original texts and kind of go into them more deeply, or look at what's around more deeply. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's probably wrong to say that Satanists are atheists, because we believe in gods. It's just that we believe that we create gods. It's not the other way around. Right.
Or it's maybe reciprocal or something, right?
Well, I mean, I mean,
chicken and egg situation.
Yeah. There's a term that's being thrown around by Satanists these days called atheists. We're atheists, because we are our own God, basically. And that's, but it's very similar again. And that brings us back to Crowley, because, LeVay is talking about following your true nature. Well, it's not that terribly different from true will. So,
that's sort of the impression I got. I mean, when I was originally looking at LeVay, I was sort of like thinking a lot of this is just kind of like ported over Thelema, or sort of a lot of it is very much present in that. But that was the conclusion I came to about chaos magic as well. Yeah, where I was like, this is just already present in Thelema if you really look at it. And I think most of that is sort of, I mean, again, it's maybe expressed in a slightly different form or given kind of different emphasis, but
Thelema is such a big tent, I mean, there's so much happening underneath that. I mean, I forget the guy's name, but he does a lot of writing online, but he's a hardcore atheistic Thelemite. For him, the value is in the philosophy and all that, and he doesn't care if Iwaz was real or whatever. But then you've also got really religious Thelemites. I mean, and it's all operating under this one tent. So I think LeVay is also operating a little bit under that tent.
Right, I always thought that difference, like, to me, that seemed like such a kind of, I don't know, like basic way of looking at it like theistic or non-theistic. I was like,
yeah.
it seems one of those things that like above the abyss, it just doesn't even, it's not even a coherent question, I guess, or like it's not even really meaningful, I guess, to think in those terms, maybe. But
because you can't. I mean, I don't know. I've had this conversation so many times, but people will say, "Well, are you an atheist?" And I'm like, "Well, first of all, define God." You know, I mean, all of it depends on your definition.
I would definitely just answer no to that because I feel like that question again just presupposes so many precepts that I just don't even.
Well, that's another great
accept, I guess, right? Where
that's another great LeVay concept. He wrote an essay called "The Third Side," and he was always saying, you know, we get that expression, right? There's two sides to the same coin. And he's and they're usually both false. He's like, the truth is always on the third side, and you got to go looking for it. And I think that, is there a God or isn't there a God, is just sort of a bullshit question.
Yeah, you know? Boring is how I would describe it. I mean, like, if something exists, then you're like, the God is kind of implied in the creation of that.
Sure.
So it's like more of what do you attribute that creation to, I guess.
Right, right.
In the atheist conception of the world, like the Big Bang might as well be God.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Like it's really just the same thing fundamentally.
Yep.
So just seems like a kind of non-starter of a question to begin with.
It's reductionist. I mean, it's
The other thing I think is just that, like, humans, I feel like humans intrinsically have like so many, I don't know, like non-rational powers and just kind of facets of experience that just kind of like can't really be broken down in any
life
meaningful way. Like, there's just so many strange facets of our experience that like to me again, it just seems like a really reductionist question that I just can't really answer seriously, I guess, or doesn't seem like a meaningful question or something.
The Church of Satan gets a lot of flack from the Satanic Temple because the one thing the Satanic Temple doesn't do is they don't do magic.
Right.
Magic is silly.
Well, to be fair, like, I think most Thelemites don't really do it either. I mean, like, honestly, like, how many people are actually doing the system as intended? I mean, it's probably vanishingly few, I would say. So I think in practice, most magicians don't really do magic either. In practice, I mean, maybe in theory, but
yeah. But I mean, magic is a very active thing in the Church of Satan, but it's, you know, do we believe that it works? Well, the standard answer is basically, you're doing the ritual to get something out of your system, let's say. Like, so for example, you've got a really shitty boss. Well, you can't just go in and blow your boss away, but you can stab him to death as a voodoo doll, you know, and just sort of get that out of your system. And if he happens to die, well, that's good too. But that's not the main focus of the ritual. However, if you ask most Satanists, I'm sure that they would say 75% of the time it does seem to work.
Right.
And now, how is that happening? You know, who knows? Life is weird, right? So,
I think the other thing too is that, like, if you're coming into contact with people from other, you know, traditions, like, I don't know, voodoo or something, they're just gonna literally be like, yeah, my deities are gonna kill your enemies.
Sure.
So I think the need to, I don't know, like the need to justify it to, I don't know, like materialists or something, like, I don't think it even really is there. Like, I usually don't think there needs to be any justification in terms of like materialism or any other sort of
I mean, I have no interest in recruiting materialists. I mean, that's one thing that the Church of Satan is not supposed to do. We don't proselytize.
Right.
You know, there's this philosophy that you're born a Satanist. And you just discover it, right? So whether or not the general public believes in magic is irrelevant.
It's kind of irrelevant, right?
I think that extends to Thelema as well. I mean, you know, I mean, we know that spirits exist. I talk with them all the time. Now, what are they exactly? Are they in my head? are they external? I'm not really interested in those questions either.
Or it's just the same thing, right? It's
right,
not really,
exactly.
It's not really a distinction that
well, that's a long Milo
yeah.
Duquette quote where he's like, yeah, it's all in our head. You just don't realize how big your head really is. Yeah.
I had so I was camping on Lake Superior. Brief story here. Was having a bit of a sleepless night on the third night or something. And yeah, I was like, I think I had like some tea a bit too late and was up too late. And I think I told you about this previous experience where I entered like a sleep paralysis state when I was...
I sort of remember this, yeah. I sort of remember you mentioning...
But it was with, I was sleeping with someone at the time, and like I entered this bizarre reality where we were like astral projections of ourselves or something. Like it was, but it happened so seamlessly from the like sleepless state into like a very agitated dream kind of like... But as a layer happening kind of like adjacent to reality, right? Like the transition was really seamless. But anyway, so I was camping on Lake Superior. And it was like 3 a.m. or something. And the first thing I noticed was I felt like something, like I just had this feeling of something is around. So like I camp in a hammock tent. And so you're, you know, like you're exposed from all sides, but because of the tarp, you also can't see what's around.
Right.
So yeah, first I felt like something was around, and then you're kind of playing with that feeling of like maybe like someone's like just walking through on their way to the washroom or something like, you know, there's people around, right? And someone's awake. Maybe it's an animal, right? But then the next thing that happened was I had this feeling as if someone was pressing their hand through the tarp, like into the hammock. And that like scared me. That like jolted me. And then I realized, well, like I saw it happen, right? But then I realized that I was in this like sleep paralysis state. So I don't know if this is spirits kind of wandering around or some entity out there. I mean, I do feel like stuff's living out there. I don't quite know how to conceptualize it, but did feel like a pretty like mystical place.
Canadian wilderness, yeah, there's all kinds of seem like spirits and other entities I would say are definitely out there. So yeah, wouldn't be surprised that you might have picked up something, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's, you know, a lot of this is cultural. You know, I mean, I think for the most part, the Japanese are very materialist people, except that their religion is animistic. I mean, there are spirits everywhere. There are sacred trees where people will go and will, you know, pray to the tree spirit. So, I mean, it's like, you know, that's what the kami are. And so I think it's, you know, a certain segment of Western society is sort of obsessed with this question, you know, do spirits exist or not? But I think most of the world in general doesn't bother with that question.
Yeah. That's right. I think the frustrating thing with Japan is that, like, I feel like Japanese people are in the habit of denying any sort of spiritual, I guess, like commitments or questions or anything. You know, they're always like, oh, we have no religion or we don't have this. But I think until you're like, well, yeah, but your entire life is religion in a way. I mean, if you look at any part of the culture is basically, animism or Shinto or festival, shrines, sacred place.
Sure.
Like it's just
the Japanese have a religion. The religion is being Japanese.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, to them, it borders.
I just think that like they have this like fixation that like this specific word like religion or like shukyo or whatever. Like they're just like, oh, that doesn't apply to us. That's some outside thing.
And I get what they're saying, but their religion is being Japanese. There is a correct way to do everything.
Yeah,
you know, and you must do it this way.
I just feel like they're in like, at least a lot of people I've met are like really incapable of conceptualizing that as being a religion.
Yeah.
Because they like just, I mean, the specific term religion or like shukyo or like they just see it as being
right,
referring solely to global religions or something. And,
well, I always like to point to etymology for that. I mean,
Right,
the
yeah,
word
yeah.
religion, religio,
Yeah.
ligature, to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
bound.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so when I say that their society is religious, what I mean is
Yeah.
they are bound by these customs that, you know, they
Definitely, yeah.
they
yeah,
follow
yeah.
religiously, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and that's always that's how I always feel. Like I always feel it's a highly religious society,
Yeah.
but it's like no one is willing. Very few people are like willing to admit that or like
Sure,
really,
sure.
I guess, like face that
Yeah.
until you do something that offends them, right? Like
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
do something that does, break the unspoken assumptions,
Right.
then yeah, they're gonna react just like any, I don't know, Christian or Muslim or
Yeah.
Satanist would, right? Like they're
You're
gonna
a
react.
heretic.
Yeah, they're gonna
you're a
react
heretic.
exactly the same as any
Yeah.
other normal religious human would, but they're just they never want to put themselves on the board. I guess like they always want to
Yeah.
have this sort of oh, we're just these.
I think in the West and also the Islamic world, people do identify themselves more by what we think of as religion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, being Japanese is a lot like being Catholic. It's
Right,
that
yeah.
same level of identity.
Yeah.
More than I think it is for like just Americans in general or, but-
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I do know a fair few Japanese occultists, and
Yeah.
I do try to sometimes like sort of put these questions to them, or like sort of investigate, like how they conceptualize all this. I think nice. I think we gotta pop off to our 50th.
yes.
yeah, cheers.
Episode 50
Cheers.
here.
Cheers.
Yeah,
This is some champagne, some Moët that Justin kindly gifted to me for my 30th
Yeah.
birthday. So yeah, here's to 50 episodes and
50
30
another one.
years.
Yeah.
50 more.
She keeps a Moët and Chandon in a pretty cabinet. Yes. So
Yeah, we started this like, with no real expectations, like maybe almost like a year ago, right? Was it?
Yeah, but
This is
yeah,
a bit over-
probably like closer to a year and a half at this point. But
Oh, is it that long already? Really?
yeah, I mean, we started pre-recording in like April. Of
Oh, is that long ago?
24.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it was like August or something. My memory is.
We like started publishing it in August, right?
Mm.
Like, had
Okay,
a bit of
yeah,
backlog,
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that. No, probably before that. Probably in July we started
It's probably
publishing.
earlier. Yeah.
it's amazing how fast these things creep up on you because I just realized that I've been doing my blog since 2012, which the years just went by. I mean, it was, so.
Yeah, I have an ancient, blogspot
Mhm.
blog too that I update maybe like once a year or something. But
Yeah.
it goes back to like, I don't know, 2008 or something.
Yeah.
Just kind of always horrified to see that it's like still there. I'm like, okay, yeah. I mean, I updated it very sparsely, but it's just the fact of having had something that long on the internet is.
I
kinda-
like to go back and read it because it shows just how much I have changed as a writer. I went back and I reread a piece that I published in 2012 on Satanism. It's called The Materialist Magician. And I almost didn't even recognize the voice.
Oh, really?
It was
Yeah.
sort of like this cocky young punk. And I was like, was I ever really like that? So
You don't feel that applies now, or you feel it's totally different
I think it's
perspective, or
different. I think it's different because part of it is just being older. I still habitually talk down to people, but now I do it more as I'm just senior to you, So that sort of thing,
kind of
whereas,
earned it, right? Yeah,
right,
yeah.
exactly. So it was more that using the age thing, I guess. But no, it was just a very different prose style for me. Even if I look at the recent articles and then I look at that, I was like, wow, I don't even remember writing that, But,
Right? Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. It's
Anything written more than like 10 years ago. I mean, I can see examples of things I wrote like more than 10 years ago, and I'm definitely kind of like, it's like what I definitely wouldn't have written it that way now, or I would have expressed things completely differently. But
yeah, if I want to be humiliated, then I go back and I read like some of the novels that I wrote in my 20s. That's embarrassing.
But you don't feel that way at all, Justin, right?
with what
Works from your 20s.
I still stand by published books, but again, if I look at like blog content or like
Okay.
I don't know, interviews from that time,
Yeah.
it's definitely pretty hard to get back into that headspace. I mean, things that I formally published and put a lot of time into, like, I feel like they still hold up, but yeah, just like random content or like interviews and things. I mean, it just feels like kind of a different time period, I guess. But
in this vein, like probably a decade ago, I like had to go back and like wipe all my Facebook statuses because that was pretty cringe because you're going through stuff you wrote like in high school. Like,
oh man, the worst one was Live Journal. If you ever,
I
that was
remember
around
that. Yeah,
for like a minute, right?
No, I mean, it was a whole era.
Really?
Like Live Journal was a whole
I must have
cringe.
caught like just the end of it.
It was a whole cringe era for at least like, I don't know, 5 years or something. And it was just, I think a lot of people were just the right age at the time to just like treat it as, I mean, it was worse than like, I don't know, MySpace or something. Live Journal is like the ultimate, I guess, like cringe, proto social media. Well, it really was social media. I mean, it was kind of like
it was the beginning. Yeah.
Facebook before Facebook, because you could leave comments and you could kind of sort of follow people.
It was basically just a blogging platform, right?
Yeah, but it was much easier to like, you know, connect with people and sort of follow people.
It's kind of like Tumblr, but
yeah,
more
it was more
text-focused.
it was more like a text Tumblr or something. But yeah, I definitely had to delete a few embarrassing Live Journal
and you should
things because wow, just unbelievable stuff.
I'm pretty uncensored with the stuff that I put out there. Like, you know, I don't like to dance around, like, for example, my Satanism, you know, and, you know, sometimes it comes back to haunt me. I was just offered, or not offered, but it was dangled in front of me a job next year teaching at a girls' Catholic school.
Okay, yeah.
And I could only imagine if I took that job and then they go back and they find this podcast, you know?
Do you think they would have, I mean, again, presumably this is in Japan, right?
Yeah, so it's in Japan, yeah.
Do you think they would have done that much of a deep dive, I guess? I mean, it's sort of...
You know, I don't, but I'm pretty easy to find now, which is the other problem. My students at the university all find me.
Okay, well, yeah.
Because all you need is my first, middle, and last name, because that's what I write under, and that's the blog. And so if they have my full name, students find me all the time.
Right,
so,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it would be pretty easy.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, my experience is it generally, it might have just been the companies I worked at, but I feel like Japanese employers are much more like blasé about, like, you know, going on people, Googling people. Or
it's
like
also
looking,
in English, and that terrifies them. So
like there's that kind of English hurdle as well. I mean, I guess if it was more of a prestige job, maybe they would like, you know, try to Google you or something. But
yeah, I don't worry about it at my school now. But teaching at a Catholic school, I think
could be an issue.
Yeah, might be a problem for them. Yeah.
Zooming in on, you said you started your blogging platform in 2012. I would say like 2012 was kind of at the time of my, I don't know, I hate to use this term, but spiritual awakening or awakening to the metaphysical, I guess, if you can say. This like kind of corresponds with, I don't know, Time Wave Zero, Terrence McKenna type stuff, or I don't know, Aztec calendar, Mayan calendar, I guess.
Right.
So just curious, like, do you think there's anything like special about that time, or like do you was there any sort of metaphysical, I guess, culmination happening at that time, or
there might have been? I mean, I think I just recently finished reading Alan Moore's new grimoire.
We gotta talk about that.
Yeah,
we gotta talk about that.
The Moon and Serpent.
I want to ask you some questions about that. Yeah.
But he puts forward this thing called the idiosphere, you know, and it's sort of like an astral plane of ideas that seems to have sort of a life of its own. And I think, you know, maybe the hive mind was buzzing in 2012 on a certain frequency, you know, and ideas were out there that a lot of people were having. Sure. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility for me, you know. I think in my case, it was just, I don't even really know what the impetus was. I had done a couple of other blogs before, but I just decided to do one focusing on my writing, my magic, and my gaming. and I just did it under my own name. It's just
Logan
Montgomery.
I think that's how I originally found you. Actually, I was just I was like Googling Enochian related stuff.
Right. Because I mean, I've got Enochian scrying sessions posted.
Yeah,
on
yeah.
It, so,
I was just kind of amazed at. I feel like yours were like the best written and kind of most detailed that just easily came up. Whereas other stuff I couldn't like. Other stuff wasn't really coming up to the same degree. So I was like, wow, this seems pretty.
I am religious about keeping a magical diary.
Right. Yeah,
and like my housemate is a good friend of mine, and I've been teaching him magic for about 10 or 15 years. And he will tell you I am constantly on his case for not writing down, recording the sessions after you have them.
Yeah.
So like those Enochian sessions, it's the first thing I'd be scrying out loud, recording my voice so that I could then write them down afterwards and make sure that they were, fresh and accurate, so yeah, I'm really religious about that.
Yeah. So I found some of those and I was just kind of amazed at the level of detail. And then just seeing that you were also living in Tokyo, I was like, wow, it's an amazing coincidence. I was like, wow, it's kind of unlikely coincidence. So I just added you, I think on Facebook.
Right.
Through that.
It was about that time. Yeah.
And this was 2012 as well.
Oh, it was later. It was probably like it was before COVID. I mean, I think it was 2000, mid 2000s or 10s or something.
Yeah, see, it kind of shifted for me because a lot of the early articles on the blog were more about magic. And still to this day, my most popular articles in terms of hits were the ones on magic. I think I wrote a 3-part review or discussion of Andrew Chumley's Azoatia. And that was still to this day my best read or my most read article.
Yeah, that's definitely a super popular. I'm in some other kind of like forums and discords and anytime that book gets mentioned, it's just like gets so much attention. And
I prefer his follow-up, The Dragon Book of Essex, but Azoatia is still pretty. Yeah. But then it got slightly more into gaming in my writing career as that started to take off, and it's kind of been dominated by that. And I would like to get back and do some more on magic, but
I think there'd definitely be the kind of the audience for that there. Yeah, you mentioned the Alan Moore book, which I've been meaning to check out and pick up as well. I mean, I've just been kind of overwhelmed with other things books I'm trying to finish, but be interested in any take you had on that as well.
I think it's probably the best introductory book on magic that I've ever seen written. I think these days, if someone says to me, well, what is magic? What is it that you do? I would say, get the Alan Moore book. Now, if you are a working occultist, it's going to be less useful,
right?
Because it's a lot of things that you already know, but it's a good refresher,
right?
And he does have some interesting new ideas, and he also sort of puts out his symbol set and his kind of system. He's created a magical alphabet that's kind of interesting. Partially rooted on the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, but also he brings in other stuff. He has this fantastic concept of the abyss, which he associates with like Lovecraft and the Cthulhian gods. It's very It's very Kenneth Grant, right?
Yeah,
but really one of the cleverest things that he does is when he's looking at the Tree of Life, you've got the top, you've got Keter, which is 1, and then you've got Hokmah, which is 2, Bina is 3, and then Hesed on the other side of the abyss is 4. Well, what falls between 3 and 4? Pi. So he associates the concept pi with the abyss, right? It's bottomless. You can't get to the end of it. It's like, and I was just like, why has no one ever done this before? So there are some gems in it, but if you've read 777 or Magic Without Tears or Book 4, I mean, this is going to be a little bit light reading, I think.
Right, yeah. I'm always interested to see his take, though. I feel like a lot of his, I guess, more nonfiction kind of stuff, whether that's just his interviews or other kind of books. I mean, always have lots of usually pretty interesting takes.
Yeah, the funny thing is that reading it, and this amused me, of course, is that he does have a real anti-Satanist bias. You know, he sort of sees Satanists as sort of like these posers and, you know, whatever. Which is funny because his ideas on magic really resonate with LeVay. And one of the key ones that both LeVay and Moore keep circling back to is the magician as artist. That magic is an art and that magic is a creative practice, right?
Right, yeah.
And you know, and I, you know, I that also is sort of at my core because that's what I'm saying in the blog. It's gaming, it's fiction, and it's magic, and I see them all. You know,
I think that's maybe the one thing I would sort of disagree with him about. Where, and I haven't encountered that idea in his other kind of, I guess, nonfiction writings. Yeah, where he
well, that's fiction, but yeah,
he seems to think that fiction and magic are just essentially the same thing, and I think they're like. I feel like that's true to an extent, but at the same time, I feel like it's kind of not because, you know, if you're writing fiction books, which, you know, I've done a fair amount,
right,
versus like actually preparing and doing specific rituals with, you know, consideration of, I don't know, astrology or seasons or I don't know, like anything where you actually have to like specifically create certain conditions and, you know, do things in a certain way. For me, it's pretty different from what I would consider just like a writing or a fiction headspace.
Except that, you know, Crowley said the same thing in book 4 when he's defining magic, right?
Yeah.
And he's saying, you know, it is my intention to write a book. I gather my magical instruments, paper, pen, you know, I use certain symbols and I arrange them. And so I would almost say that maybe art is a subset of magic.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that. I would probably say that's sort of how I would look at it. And I think we talked about other things, which I've said I consider subsets of magic, basically, which also have similar structures and
art changes the world, changes people. It's incredibly powerful, you know. So
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these things didn't used to be considered separate. Like they're all kind of this like weird overlapping, I don't know, magisteria or something, or kind of
sure,
kind of domain, and then got separated over time. But probably originally weren't really that separate.
No, shamans were the first storytellers, and you know, I mean, even in classical Greece, you know, I mean. The Iliad was originally orally transmitted, you know, and it was a magical experience. People would gather and hear these powerful lines delivered, and it must have been just transformative for them, you know. I mean, theater started as, you know, worshiping Dionysus. So, I mean, it's like, you know, I think art does emerge from magic and shamanism, and, you know, but yeah, so.
Yeah, I think it's something we sort of lost in the present where, again, people are coming from more of a written culture, so they don't really have this like poetry memorization headspace, which people used to have, which is, I still think it's quite valuable and maybe I think worthwhile.
It's even more nefarious than that, though, because during, you know, since the Enlightenment, language has been hijacked to push this sort of materialist message, right? Psychological used to refer to the spirit. Now it's just the mind. Esoteric, well, that just means inner, but now we use esoteric to mean, well, it's nonsense. It's too complicated. It's too esoteric for me, right? Myth today means something that's not true. Well, that's bullshit. I mean, myth is a transformative story and has been at the core of religion. I mean, I would say the Bible is full of myths, but it continues to transform people's lives. But I think there's been a real attack on rewriting the language by whatever hobgoblins are out there, you know, to sort of kill the sort of spiritual side of things or the sort of the magical side of things.
Right, yeah. There's interesting stuff with the, like you probably read the Jake Stratton Kent material where he definitely kind of deep dives on this and gets back to like what words originally meant and like what, you know, what things, and he has kind of an interesting take on spirits too, which I'm still kind of trying to grapple with, is almost just seeing them as material, which is a really, again, strange way of conceptualizing, because you're like, well, isn't it like the opposite, or like doesn't it mean
I mean, the closest that I would come to agreeing with that is that whatever experience we have of the physical world, like sitting on this bed right now, this is actually happening in my head. I mean, I'm being fed these nerve impulses and sensory things, but I'm assembling in my head. And, you know, if that's where spirits live, if, all right, just putting that out there, then that would make spirits just as real as the bed that I'm sitting on, because they're both occupying this meat inside of my skull.
Right.
If that's where spirits live, right? So,
I always like, again, this with some of these, there's a few other people that are like really on this same kind of kick as Jake there, who I did kind of have some I mean, he's dead now, but I did have some interaction with him on Facebook when he was alive, and you know, he's incredibly insightful, kind of almost genius level magician and writer. But I definitely feel like his project is really interesting. I mean, I do wonder sometimes to the extent which we can really, I guess, like conceive things in the way people did, like, I don't know, 3,000 years ago. Again, our words don't mean the same thing. We have like, you know, built-in other assumptions. We have all these other layers of intervening culture. And I think recently there's this sort of attack from that quarter on basically the 19th century, you know, where they're like, you know, all this stuff like, you know, the Golden Dawn and the Golden Bough and everything, you know, it's completely inaccurate and, you know, fabricated and, you know, historically wrong. And there's certainly an element of truth to that, but I always, in the back of my mind, I always think, well, but we can't really go back either. Like we've already lived through that, and pretending it didn't happen seems kind of, I don't know if we can just pretend that it didn't happen, I guess. I mean,
well, I mean, academics have their own agendas. I mean, you know, my background is in the world of academia, and, you know, can tell you firsthand, you know, everybody's got their own pet theory, and it's really all about sort of proving that your theory is better than the other guy's theory, and, you know, and so this kind of revisionism is exciting, and it gets your names, you know, in print, and that's, you know, a lot of what drives it, I think, you know, and trends as well, but definitely, though, I mean, it's been going on, it's been accelerating, I would say, but this sort of neutering the language so that it's just completely materialistic, right?
Jumping off that, and this is something you called out, and I've seen recent articles on this, and I hate to bring up AI in every single podcast, but basically the gist of the article was that ChatGPT is changing the way people talk.
I think we mentioned this a little bit before as well, right?
But you called, like, it was off mic, but you basically mentioned how ChatGPT will essentially constrain the parameters or boundaries of language,
right?
And kind of like funnel everything into like basically newspeak a la 1984. And it's happening. And yeah,
I am amazed how fast it all has hit.
Yeah, it's
like
been crazy.
AI was, you know, a bit taboo a few years ago, but now my university actually teaches a course to students on how to use AI to enhance their studying. And it just blows my mind. It's just suddenly been accepted. It's like, okay, well, this is a thing now, you know? I mean, I know that there are teachers who are using it to generate tests.
Mm.
And I just can't believe how quickly it's being accepted. So
How do you feel about its acceptance, I guess? Do you like, is that to say that you think it should have been resisted more, or are you surprised that there wasn't more resistance? Like, how do I interpret that statement?
yeah, so I have complicated feelings on this because it goes back again to, talking about the Church of Satan and artificial human companions and all this.
Right.
I find AI fascinating and I enjoy using it recreationally. But how do I say this? Well, there's no way to say this politely. The masses ruin everything. I think most people are not really equipped for things like this, and they embrace the gospel truth of it, just like what their political party tells them or their drunk uncle tells them, or what they read on the internet,
Yeah.
And it's just, people are not taught to question. They're not taught to critique or really think. And this is just another way to help them not think.
That's always what I come back to. And again, in practice, I see so many people, like even people that we personally know, like just getting cocooned in echo chambers of their own making. And it just starts spiraling and they're trying to convince other people of it. And it's just like, it's one of these things that seems so transparent if you see it from the outside.
Sure. Yeah.
But to them, it's, they're just going deeper and down the rabbit hole and, thinking they're finding out, the gospel truth or whatever, whatever they're on about, could be the gospel truth, could be aliens, could be conspiracies or whatever. I mean, it's just like any, and they just don't even seem aware that it's literally just picking up on everything they feed it and just spitting it back and just, well,
that's it's the myth of Narcissus.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What does he do? He falls in love with his own reflection.
Right.
And this is what people are doing every time they stare into their smartphones. It's just reflecting back at them.
Yeah.
And they're all bewitched. They're all just sort of,
Yeah, I just feel like it is surprising. I mean, just the level that, again, I think if you were trying to convince these people of things using maybe more conventional sources, like just, I don't know, throwing books at them or something,
it's not going to work.
They would obviously just be like, yeah, this is ridiculous or something. But again, I think because it is so, easy to just interact with it and get immediate results and, have everything seemingly confirmed, in real time, that it's just kind of bypassing their filter, I guess, or kind of getting past that.
Well, LeVay, in his lifetime, used to call television the new god. Well, unfortunately, he died before social media hit, because I would love to see what his take would be on all of this. It is the new god,
There was that one meme shared in one of the chats where essentially it was like comparing like circuit diagrams to sigils. And it was kind of creating this image of AI being like some kind of demonic sigil, demon trapped type thing.
Yeah, well, you could call it, I mean, there is like a technical term, like a servitor, which is like sort of a companion spirit, which sort of has the same function, I guess you could say. Even though you're supposed to heavily monitor it and control it and
it's
force
a chaos magic thing,
force it to do what you're supposed to. So I mean, these ideas have sort of been around in various forms for a while, but
and I, again, the Satanist in me, if some guy wants to jerk off with an AI girlfriend, I have no problem with that. I'm, more power to him, but there's a difference between jerking off to your AI girlfriend and then ChatGPT telling you what to think. I think that's, so we're entering Skynet territory at that point. So,
I was imagining this, I was reading recently the original book, Cybernetics by Norbert Wiener, if you've heard of...
I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
This is the scientist who created the term cybernetics. And I don't know, 1945 or something. And they were interviewing him in Time magazine in I think 1947 or 48, and he's kind of just like laying out everything that's happening now, but in 1948. So he's like, the second industrial, the first industrial revolution, usurped the power of physical labor, and the next industrial revolution is going to usurp the power of cognitive labor.
Right.
And, he's saying, like, computer, mechanical computer mind equivalents will be, running factories and replacing executives. And, the reporter from Time is like, the wacky professor continued in this science fiction vein, and, all predictions which will surely never come to pass. He's just trying to play it off as like, it's like some wacky professor that's cooking up, science fiction or something. He's like, computerized machines imitating the power of the mind. Like that could never come to pass. Right? So I just got off on this track of like imagining, like what if you actually time traveled back to Norbert Wiener, and you were like, in the 100 years from now, there's gonna be tiny computers everywhere will be counterfeiting pornographic photographs constantly, and trapping people in these orgasm loops of inauthentic images and stuff. And I think he probably would have actually laughed at you and been like, look, I'm trying to seriously envision the future of industrial society here.
Sure.
You're talking to me about, gooning and waifus and everything. Like, I don't think he would have even believed it would have been as silly as it kind of is. Like,
but people did see it coming. I mean, people did see it coming.
He did broadly, but, I don't think they
not like this, right?
I don't think they would have predicted anything as silly as what it's actually being used for.
Yeah, or not AI Daenerys Targaryen telling a 9-year-old boy to commit suicide.
Yeah,
right?
I think a lot of the specific manifestations probably would have seemed almost like beneath consideration, because I mean they were just in such a different society that it wouldn't have even seemed like a credible thing that like computers producing unlimited unreal porn, like it's just not something they would have even entered their train. He was incredibly imagining executives in factories being replaced, and,
which is happening, but
but I think they didn't imagine like the sort of psychological private level of penetration.
I think that's probably says more about him than anything else, because I mean any new technology is immediately turned to porn.
Right.
I mean, the minute we get a new technology,
like,
how do we apply this to porn? And that's
the internet is for porn. I think just captured that beautifully, right? In 20 whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have Netflix because of porn streaming, technology that was created for porn sites, then gets to Netflix and other streaming services, and so here we go. I mean, it's I think AI is the new one. So
I think there's later writers like J.G. Ballard and a few other people that sort of did make that connection, maybe a few decades later,
But again, I think Anton would have approved. I mean, with a sort of sardonic grin, because I mean, he famously wrote, I think, in the Satanic Bible, a superior fantasy is better than a lousy lay.
Right.
And so if they're giving these guys a superior fantasy, then hey, who am I to disagree?
But you mentioned Gatebox, which was this Japanese. I think it was a discontinued product, but they're gonna have this like ultimate AI like girlfriend or wife that would like be sort of like a embodied internet in your house. So like you would get home and it would just like automatically turn on the lights and open the refrigerator and get the temperature turned up, and you'd be like texting it all day on your phone and sending messages and stuff.
The funny thing about this conversation is next weekend I'm going down to a game convention in Nagoya to push this new scenario that I wrote for a collection of a collection of writers, yeah, but I just wrote one scenario for it, and it's a Call of Cthulhu campaign called The Sutra of Pale Leaves. And my story, Wonderland, is set in a Japanese high school in the bubble era in the 1980s. And basically the idea is there is a Cthulian entity who has created a sort of viral meme to take over people's minds. And he's put it into sort of a text-based, multi-user dungeon online. So these teenage boys are playing it and reading the text. It's going in and rewriting their brains and, And I think that basically we've arrived there. I mean, that's that's where we are in 2025.
Right, yeah.
So it was sort of me also when I was writing that scenario, sort of thumbing my nose at the current state of things. Yeah. So,
right. Yeah.
But
I do wonder what very small children getting born into this kind of situation are going to turn out with having access to these kind of tools and kind of AI technology. I mean, it's kind of a concern, I guess, but
yeah. I mean, I think I mentioned this not too long ago, but it's wild to me that humans are still being born now. Like, imagine being born into the current state of affairs. It's pretty
yeah.
No, I made the decision a very long time ago not to contribute to that circus. So
to the Ponzi human Ponzi scheme.
No creating new humans for me. Yeah. No, and today it's just going to be. I mean, we're post everything. Post is now the magic word. We are post spirituality. We're post religion. We're post truth. We're just. I don't even know where we are as a society anymore,
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I think I said this to Nick like 2 episodes ago, like consensus reality doesn't exist anymore.
No.
Increasingly not, right? Yeah, it's increasingly getting fractured and kind of drifting off into nothing, really.
Yeah, because I mean, everyone is living in their own little bubbles. And that's,
their own little fantasy, their own little smartphone, right?
And again, that circles back to LeVay, because yes, as I said, he advocated creating your little bubble to live in, but not permanently. He would talk about how people are essentially amphibious. We need to sort of swim in fantasy and dreams and illusion, but we also need to come ashore onto the dry land of reason, every now and then. And that latter part is not happening so much anymore. People are just sort of staying in the fantasy because it's more comfortable.
Right. Yeah.
Just in the interest of keeping things fluid here, we're at an hour 7, and I think we want to do a bit extra for the 50th episode.
Yeah, I think we should continue.
I'm also conscious of your time.
Check your time,
how are you for your last stream?
This is. I mean, it's
getting there.
Yeah. I mean,
I've got getting grainy. Okay.
Yeah.
How much are you realistically able to get to Shinjuku from here, or
well, it would take.
It's basically just one stop on Saikyo,
not super
depending
long,
on timing.
Right.
What time does it leave from Shinjuku?
Yeah, it's leaving at 10:20.
Okay, yeah, so should be able to make that.
40 minutes or so. But yeah, I mean, how
realistically
should we,
probably want to
how do we time this to
we could,
keep things?
I think
not
we might have
too stressful.
You could maybe go for another 5 or 10 minutes, maybe, and then
try and land
probably
it in
should
the
let
next.
it. Yeah. Time concerns. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just because I worked.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
Sunday.
so does everyone. I think. Yeah. Unfortunately, but
on we were talking about the smartphone Black Mirror connection.
Okay,
it was referencing smartphone, and then I believe Enochian Magic has a black scrying glass.
Yeah,
Right?
It's a black obsidian mirror.
Black obsidian mirror.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so interesting connection.
There's originally from the weird. It's really interesting, weird history. Like I think Dee and Kelly originally got it from the New World. Like it was like an Aztec mirror or something.
There is a debate on what exactly they used, but there is that story that there was a black glass scrying mirror. Yeah.
But you didn't use it in your practice?
I didn't. No, I have tried it before, but
Was it actually a black obsidian mirror, or is it a kind
I
of...
used a black obsidian mirror more for goetic work
Okay.
to deal with goetic demons. Enochian, I have this bizarre relationship with it because, and I guess it's this way for a lot of people, but I've done a lot of scrying. But when you recite an Enochian key, for me, it's like taking a hit of acid. I mean, it's this immediate boom.
It's so interesting because our friend Ryan in Korea, who's also practicing, and he describes it like almost exactly the same way. He's just like, it's almost like doing like DMT or something, where just instantly
there's nothing else like it. I mean, I can do goetic workings and summon a demon, but the process is not as overwhelming. I mean, I for me, Enochian has always been like full Technicolor, huge budget CGI special effects. You know, it just hits immediately. Yeah.
Is it, I don't know, like, is it classic psychedelic feeling, or how does it overlap, I guess?
It feels very real to me, but the visions themselves, I think, are quite psychedelic in
terms of like the visual aspect of it specifically, or...
Yes, colors are sharper.
Is there the classic kind of symmetrical, kaleidoscopic visuals?
No, not so much. No, it's more like the color saturation is turned up really, really high. Things sort of jump out at you, and
do things feel photorealistic, or is it more of a sort of claymation, or I don't know?
I would almost say animation in a way, like almost like a animated movie, because of the colors, I think. But the thing is that it's this is usually me going there, so it's a full environment, right? And I'm meeting spirits in the context of that. You know, I have done some workings where I bring the Enochian entities out, and it's similar, but for some reason, scrying the aethers is more intense, I think, for me. But yeah,
do you like build all the furniture and everything, or like do you set up the tables?
No, I don't use any of that. I do have watchtower tablets. I mean, for each of the watchtowers, and I have the tablet of union. I do have a scrying glass, but I don't really use it that much for Enochian work. But yeah, I didn't build like the special table.
Right. Yeah.
I know that some people, you know, I mean, I think Lom Duquette was talking about doing that, you know. But what's that book? Duquette and Christopher Hyatt worked on it together. The Enochian World of Aleister Crowley.
Okay,
it's a slim little book, but I think that's one of the best manuals for working with Enochian spirits. Yeah, but it's intense stuff, and it's a fascinating system, I think. Yeah.
Do you think people should pursue this practice, or like, is there value to it?
Yes, absolutely. There's value to it.
Is it like a thing people should do, or is it like a thing that if you want to do it, you will inevitably find it and do it? Like, how am I trying to explain this? Like,
yeah,
is this an area that humans should strive towards, or is this more of like, you know, if you are interested in this, then you will inevitably kind of wind up there?
As much as I love the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life as a way of modeling the universe, I think the Enochian system is a much more detailed and complex and beautiful way of modeling the universe.
Interesting.
You know, it's these watchtower tablets have everything in it. I mean, each one has the four elements, each one has the planets, each one has, you know, its own demons, its own archangels, its own, you know, and they're all in the structure of the system. You're not just associating it and memorizing it. You can look at the tablet and see the names written there, you know. And it's the thing that I like the most about it is that it's English. And what I mean by that is I think that there's a reason that the Liberal was delivered in English. I mean, and told Crowley, look for an English Kabbalah. And I think there's a reason why Crowley was so interested in Enochian. I think that whatever Dee and Kelly were doing broke with the past and was a totally new tradition that took root there in 17th century England. And I think that Thelema is deeply rooted in that. I think, because the Enochian angels were talking about the apocalypse. And they said specifically, we have been sent here to bring about the apocalypse. Well, Crowley would say, well, good job, boys. You did it, and here I am, right? And again, I don't think that it's a mistake that Anton LeVay, who thumbed his nose at so much traditional magic and Kabbalah, used all of the Enochian keys in his Satanic Bible. He latched onto that same theme, right?
Yeah, I was reading coincidentally, or not coincidentally, just last night actually, I was just reading Liber 418 again, the Vision and the Voice.
Vision and the Voice, yeah.
Which I always go back to, and it's just such an incredible book. I mean, I feel like even
speaking of psychedelic,
even if you just look at it purely from a literary viewpoint, I mean, it has to be up there with James Joyce or something. It's just just a modernist masterpiece of just prose and invention. I mean, I don't know how else you could even start to look at it.
I think all of his holy books, the received texts are on that level.
Yeah, they're very strange and almost pushing things. I'm surprised that people, again, even including Thelemites in this. I mean, it's amazing how little they talk about them, right? I very rarely hear anyone actually quoting them or, kind of deep diving them or just using them as points of reference. And they're all just so strange and almost confounding in a way that is just initially overwhelming, but does make sense when you kind of start, taking them apart. And I think especially 418 or Vision of the Voice, I mean, it's just such trying to think how to explain it to someone that's just never even looked at it. And it's it's like the Bible if it was good, I guess. I don't know how I don't know how else to even
that's
describe it. I mean, it's just it's like if it had been written, the Bible had been written with, I don't know, a modern budget and sophistication beyond, what was, I don't even, again, it's maybe a silly way to describe it.
No, I don't think so at all. That's what I was trying to drive at with when I, jokingly said, because they're English. England at that point had just broken with the Catholic Church, and they were trying to replace the old religion with a new religion. And you can almost see the shadow there. It's not a mistake that Crowley came from England either. I think that there was something set in motion there. And I think that Enochian is sort of the vehicle that's sort of carrying I want to call it a new spirituality. Kabbalah is a very old system, and it's very rooted in traditional religion and symbolism. And Enochian's got some of that, but it's also something fresh. It's something new. It's a new technology, I would say. Yeah.
You would describe it as new even now.
Sure. Even now. Yeah. Even now.
So I mean, this
I guess just another part of that is that Dee and Kelly, who initially received this system, they sort of handled it with almost protective gloves, and because they had to very laboriously retrieve these letters backwards in a mirror, because they didn't want to actually really do anything that they were given access to, because they weren't sure they could trust it.
I think they were literally denied permission. I think one of the angels told them in Dee's journals that this is not for you.
Yeah.
You're recording this. It's not for you. You know.
Yeah, so it was almost like it was, and again, some of the suggestions that were made to them, they're suggesting like wife swapping and other kind of they were given instructions to do things which sort of contradicted their cultural morals and stuff, which again kind of presented other problems for them. But yeah, it sort of did feel like it was like some system from their future or something which wasn't,
I don't think the technology actually got used until Crowley used it. I mean, the Golden Dawn, they dabbled, but you had bedwetters like Arthur Waite, who's sort of like, oh, don't touch Enochian, it will fry your mind. You know? And then it was just Crowley just, I mean, nothing was forbidden to him. He just dove into it, you know. But I have always found it fascinating. That is the one thing that LeVay kept as well. Enochian was a big part of his satanic rituals, and so definitely, I think there's something happening there about.
So I think there's more to explore in part 2 of this episode.
Bring me back.
But yeah, thank you, Drew. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
I think we got into some interesting areas.
I'm just sorry that I got to run back down to the coast.
It is on Sunday, right?
It's Sunday.
Monday, and we all know how that goes. But thank you. Looking forward to
having
you back.
We do want to get you back and
get me back.
Yeah, maybe next time, like we said, might get Rami, who's
sure.
Church of Satan.
We can cover new territory or whatever.
And please send me your links or whatever you want in the description. And we'll have you all your stuff there. Okay. So thank you, Drew.
All right. Thank you very much. Happy 50th.
Yeah. Congrats on the 50.
Thank you.
Congrats on the 50.
We'll be here for another 50, right?
Awesome. And more. 50 and beyond.
50 and beyond. Good.
All right. Okay. Thanks all.
Thanks.
Peace. Have a good week.